welcome to this episode of the Dealer Playbook, a podcast that explores what it takes to create a thriving career right here in the retail auto industry. I'm your host, Michael Cirillo. I'm so excited that you're here, especially to hear my conversation with my pal, Bill Zadeits. He's the president at Cherokee Media Group. We're talking about used cars. Well, I think this has been a long time coming. I've been on your podcast. I've spoken at your event, which, by the way, you guys, Auto Remarketing puts on amazing events. Cherokee Media, you guys know what's what when it comes to events. You guys have some exciting things coming up that we'll talk about a little bit later in the episode, but I just want to thank you for taking the time to join me on the Dealer Playbook. I've got questions on questions because I know someone that sits in your seat. I just picture you with your finger out because it's always on the pulse of what's happening in the industry. I want to talk to you about the used car market specifically. Obviously, we've just gotten on this roller coaster that we didn't know we were going to get on. Right. We don't remember when we paid the admission to get onto this ride.
We want to get off. We want to get off.
Get off real quick. But nobody's telling us really what we need to know to get off. But from your vantage point, what's kind of been the saving grace of all of this, if anything? I mean, I've seen, in your August issue of Auto Remarketing, there was an article. I can't remember his name. He's from J.D. Power. He talked about certified pre-owned and how a lot of attention has gone there. What are you seeing from where you sit?
Well, I think that, there's so many different market conditions and, percentages and, different things of that nature we could talk about. But I think this industry and Michael, this as well as or better than everybody. It's people, man. It really is people. Now, we've been fortunate. I think that, especially when you look at used car sales, I think that there was obviously some pent-up demand coming out of, the spring as markets started to open and all those types of things. But, I think at the end of the day, just the will of the people to say, okay, the way we used to do business is not going to work in this environment. So what do we need to do? What's it going to take to change and to do what it takes, basically, or to do whatever it takes to do that? So I think the foundation of it underlying is just a lot of really great people that work in this industry across the board. And I think that's the foundation of it. And then built on top of that, there have been some good things to happen. In light of all the bad things that kind of have hit us and continue to kind of still fall into the market. We've been fortunate that, I think on a macro level, especially, there's been a lot of money flowed into and invested into the system macro level. And I think and that's not to say that, my heart goes out to some of these small business owners. Mm-hmm. If you owned a restaurant or, God forbid, a bar, I don't know the best business owner that says, hey, we need to go in this year with probably 12 months of operating capital and we'll see what happens. It's just it's terrible, right, from that aspect of it. So I feel for them, but, from an automotive industry standpoint, I think great people, good, bad, or indifferent. I think that there are a lot of people that either looked at mass transportation or ride-sharing transportation or, whatever that may be and said, hey, I don't know if I'm going that direction right now. So I'm going to look at this, this used vehicle and that opportunity. So I think there are a lot of different things that kind of add on to that. But I would say definitely in our conversations, it's just been, the people in the industry that have kind of rallied together and said, okay, what do we do to make this work? How do we make this work? What can we do? And then with some fortuitous bounces of the ball, if you will, we find ourselves in not necessarily a great spot right now, but man, it sure could be worse.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're saying all of this, what rings true to me is a couple of things you've said that I love. And I'm having flashbacks to Toronto standing on stage at the peak of as good as things could have been in front of, gosh, I don't know how many dealers you had in that room. Let's say 1,000, maybe 500, maybe, I don't know what the actual number was, but there were a lot.
Probably somewhere in between there. Yeah.
Looking at a sea of dealers, and they think they're about to get a marketing talk. And I share with them basically what you just said, and I think this is why it resonates with me, that the biggest fish is not being disturbed or disrupted. The bigger fish is not your competitor who has more capital. The bigger fish is not Carvana. It's what you started this whole conversation with, people, the customer, the person that is taking their hard-earned dollars out of their pocket in exchange for something that you see valuable. And the other thing that you just said, which really resonates with me, is that, and I think this is a positive thing, is it has refocused us as an industry on the fact that we don't sell metal, we sell freedom. What you just said about mass transportation and people going and choosing to go to own a vehicle, that to me says, wait, there is way more utility in having a vehicle than I think we all realize. Like, we all took for granted the ability we have to move around in something that we own. And so, so this is just super fascinating to me. It's also, I think, not to get all spiritual or whatever, but like nothing short of miraculous to see how quickly consumer confidence returned.
Yeah.
Even though we're still in the midst of all of this.
Sure.
What's your take on that? Like, what do you think has been driving that?
I think it's a lot of different things. I mean, I think that, you mentioned, what we took for granted. And man, how long is that list right now? I mean, even a year ago when things were going well, we probably could have, sat down at the end of the conference and, taken our jackets off and been, man, what am I thankful for? What have I taken for granted? But I have got to tell you, I mean, I would say my list has grown substantially since a year ago. From that standpoint. And again, it goes back to people. I mean, I look at our small company, from that standpoint, and, the things that our team has done collectively, individually, man, they've all had to make some sacrifices along the way. And, but still to show up every day or to log on every day, or, to whatever that looks like. And we do have a few people in and out of the office,
sure.
For sure. And that's been great. It's been great to be able to have that collaboration and those conversations. But, I think that it's, what we did take for granted. I mean, in so many ways. And I think that when you look at going forward, to, pertinent to our conversation, I mean, as you said, the freedom of a vehicle, when you are basically at some points during the last 5 or 6 months told not to go anywhere. You need to stay home. Yeah. For everyone's good, for your own good, for the collective good, for your, the good of your kids, your parents, your neighbors, your friends, your business, all these things. And I think that there's a part of us, it's kind of wired into our DNA that whether it's a bike or a motorcycle or your SUV or whatever, it does give you that freedom. I mean, there were times, 4 or 5 months ago when, you had to get suited up to go to the grocery store, and that was all great. But hey, man, we're going out. We're headed out to the grocery store. Oh, praise God. I mean, this is like amazing, right? I mean, you're like, I'm not going to get everything today because I might want to go back again on Wednesday. And just check it out. There might be some new stuff at the grocery store. Where typically for me, I mean, it's like, okay, babe, what can I pick you up on the way home? Happy to do it. I don't really mean it. Yeah. I do right. Mean it, but I'm like, please don't make me stop at the grocery. But now, I mean, it's like, hey, let's go to the grocery store, man. This is awesome. Let's run through the drive-through.
I know.
It's awesome. Let's hit a Chick-fil-A. Oh my gosh.
I used to remember growing up, my parents would be like, hey, we're just going to go run out for a drink real quick. And they would just go to McDonald's drive-thru. And I'm like, these have got to be the most lame people I have ever met in my entire life. And now I find my wife, by the way, who I think is an 86-year-old trapped in a 35-year-old's body, wrote a letter to McDonald's because they were late on dollar drink days.
Nice.
Because it wasn't legit. Even necessarily about dollar drink days. It was about, I got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
All my wife and I can do is hop in the car, stay in the car. And if that means a little bit of relief is going through the drive-thru, like you just said, then so be it. And now I've realized, I guess that was the first lesson, is you're right. Like the list of what we take for granted, the utility of a vehicle, the freedom of a vehicle, especially at a time like this. The second thing I learned is that we all become our parents.
We totally do. Absolutely.
And that also puts it into perspective, right? Because I look at my grandfather. He was born in 1916.
Yeah.
His dad fought in World War I. He grows up. He fights in World War II. He's on the front lines of World War II for the entire duration of the war. And then that war ends. And then there's, what is it? Vietnam, Korea, Libya, Middle East, Iraq.
Yeah.
His entire life was the world at war. And now we're dealing with this thing and it's awful and we want to do our part and we're going to definitely make the history books for sure.
Right.
But it's in a way been kind of a blessing because I think a lot of people have focused on what matters most, or they've been given a cause to focus on what matters most. Dealers have been, they've been dialing back, whether it's their marketing or whether it's whatever it might be, but it's because they finally went, whoa, we need to adapt and change. And I think a really positive thing is we realized how quickly an industry can actually start to, when we're put under pressure, man, we adapt and we evolve.
Yeah.
And you hear about other industries who are still like behind the 8 ball and we're 6 months into this deal. And it's like, what do I do? And to see how quickly dealers from coast to coast just were like, no, okay, change process.
Right.
It's pretty spectacular.
Right. It really is. It really is. And I think that runs, especially when we talk about the used car market. I mean, I think that runs from the retail side, which is exactly what you're talking about and what they had to do on the retail side, clear through the whole process into the wholesale market. I mean, because man, even, not that long ago, when you said something like the word auto auction, all you thought about was, 1,000 people standing in all these lanes, bidding on vehicles that were being driven through one at a time, and the excitement of it and, the game day atmosphere of that, which was an adrenaline rush. And to have all of that process really go to a digital platform completely. And now there's some, they're beginning to do some in-person stuff where it makes sense. But, you look at new cars. I mean, man, it's still some of the production is slow to catch up. Some of these factories are not running at 100%. So used cars are critically important, to the dealership world. Franchise dealerships, obviously. Independent dealers, no matter what, right? They've got to have that inventory. And of course, we can talk about some market conditions. I mean, wholesale prices are high, right now. They're strong. I mean, some of the inventories are getting tighter, on dealer lots. And this is true for North America, not just in Canada, right. It's true for a North American picture. Which is beginning to cause some things. Everyone, a few weeks ago was talking about, oh my gosh, I can't imagine what if Hertz has to sell all of these cars.
Right.
And now they're like, man, I wish Hertz would sell some more cars and bring that inventory back into the system. So it really has been amazing. I mean, the industry took I'm almost tired of the word pivot. and I don't know a better word, but I'll apologize for using the word pivot. It's really become the buzzword. But I mean, for right now, I'll say that. I mean, it was a tremendous pivot into a completely digital atmosphere, and you're right, man. The customers came back. Thank goodness. I mean, thank goodness the customers came back and continue to come back, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing, and that's why I like. When you kind of look at the timeline and the media is saying, buckle up, man. Yeah, I get it. Like, a lot of people have lost their jobs, and my heart goes out to them. We pray for them, everything. And the numbers are horrific, but then to see the number of people that quickly return to market.
Yeah.
And still maintain, that to me sheds some light on how blessed we actually are.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not this way worldwide. Maybe it is, but I know we are definitely blessed to live in North America. It's unreal.
No doubt. No doubt.
What impact is this going to have over the next, 3 to 5 years, do you think? I mean, shortage in production, wholesale is strong. There's a demand. We need used cars. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, I would love to believe in all of my optimism that this will not be the what is it, the butterfly effect that causes us to be like Cuba, where we're all just driving in like 19. Yeah. The last year you could get was the 2015, man, and now we're in 2080 and still driving 2015s.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, gosh, man. I mean, 3 to 5 years. That's a great question. I don't know really, but I think that at least as we look out a little more near term, I think that we will begin to see obviously production get closer to where maybe it was. So we'll see that the new car production begin to normalize, if that's the right word, or maybe, come back to where it was. On the used car side, again, we're talking about inventory and how people are sourcing inventory. I mean, there've been, very few, if any, repossessions to this point. Because all the governmental officials know, we're going to put a stop on repossessions, which on a human level, you say, yeah, man, that makes a lot of sense. People are struggling, they can't get to their jobs and they're not earning what they were earning. And so, that makes sense. But then the larger scale of that is that there are banks and, captive finance companies and these other finance companies that are not getting paid, necessarily for those vehicles. So I think that we will begin to see a slow pickup in repossessions, which will feed, kind of that used car market, if you will. And the other thing with that, and this is really from more of a captive standpoint, is that what we saw in the same vein, and again, no criticism of this at all. I mean, it was the right thing to do, where leases were extended. So if you had a lease come and due at the end of April of this year, no problem. We're just going to extend that. We're not going to bring that car back into the market. We're not going to remarket that vehicle. We're just going to extend that lease. And so some of those things are expiring. So you have some repossessions, you have, lease extensions, you have some of these other vehicles, whether it's a Hertz or whatever it might be, defleeting, if you will, that's going to feed some of the market. And so while the wholesale market is just, really outperformed in terms of the numbers, and dealers are paying big dollars, the full amount for that inventory, you probably could see some softening of that as we move forward a bit. And, I don't think the dealers would be, I don't want to speak for them because I'm not one, but I think that as they see some wholesale prices begin to soften a little bit, I think that that would just encourage them even more so.
Right.
Because everyone, I think that, this generation, our generation, understands for the most part the value of a certified pre-owned vehicle. And what comes with that. And so I think that those value propositions are going to be there for the long term. I think there are always going to be people that want the new and shiny, and we need that. I mean, we need people to buy new cars, because on the used car side of things, that's that's the first piece of the manufacturing process of a used car is to get that new car sold, right?
Yeah.
And so we need that. We need those leases going. So I think we'll see some of that long term. That's that's a great question. I don't know that I have the wisdom to really go out long term, but I think that we're going to see some of these things, and I'd love to know your opinion too. Like, what's going to stick from this digital retailing revolution and that type of thing? It'd be really interesting because I hear some people say, man, this is changed the tide dramatically and it's really helped. And then I'll read something else like, man, people are loving coming back into the stores. They want to come in here and see these vehicles. And maybe the truth is somewhere in between. I don't know.
I think so. I think, well, you're always going to have that. As long as we're dealing with people, you're going to have those that are in denial, like 100%, who are just cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And so maybe they think it's better than it is. Who knows? Maybe it's not. Like maybe there are those that see it clearly. But I think that those who adapt are going to be much better off than, like, if you're in denial and you haven't had the wake up call through all of this.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one. The other thing, though, and I was curious your opinion on it. No, sorry, let me just finish that train of thought, because you said digital retail, and I went, everybody, because that's the other buzz, right? Digital retail. And what do they say? I mean, they say, oh, digital retail, Carvana. And it's like, no. BDC. BDC like Carvana.
Right.
Like you remember back in the old day, the Disney cartoons where the bird, what was it, like a pelican or whatever, would deliver the baby on the doorstep?
Yeah, the stork.
Yeah, the stork. That's what it is. You think just like the Carvana stork is just going to come and drop that golden coin on your front lawn and then you can take it and put it into an actual vending? Like, come on. There's a BDC powering this business, helping you with your financing, helping you with all it. Like, I don't think people realize what's happening on the back end of a company like that. And so when it comes to digital retail, here is my fear. DPB gang, assemble from around the world and hear my fear that digital retail and the companies that produce a digital, because, dude, I can't wait till NADA, right? It's going to be digital retail out the wazoo.
Yeah.
That are going to be these quasi frustrating technological, whatever, makeshift applications. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some finance companies and there are people pushing the envelope, but I think this could be, my fear is this could be the next thing that everybody latches onto, to the degree that all the big box providers start providing their iteration of digital retail, and it's going to leave so many people screwed up. Why? Your first point. The foundation of anything to do with commerce is people. Right. And there's going to be so many dealers, sadly, that are going to buy into this $3,000 a month package or whatever it's going to be. You know, it's going to be high. It's not going to be cheap for the dealer. They're going to buy into this, have no back end process to support it, piss more customers off than they can handle. And this will be a resurgence of that negative stigma in the car industry that we have worked tirelessly, gentlemen like you, me, phenomenal people like Subi Ghosh or Lisa Copeland or whoever that have worked tirelessly, Carrie Reese Wise, to kill that, Glenn Lundy, right? Like all these people that have worked tirelessly to kill that stigma. It's going to resurface because there's going to be so many dealers all over the place offering this patched together, band-aided thing that the vendor promised them would lasso the sun, the moon, and the stars. So that's my fear.
Right.
With all of that, just neglect of people. But on the flip side of things, do I think we're headed to a place where you can just do the whole thing online? Yeah. I mean, like there are companies out there like AutoFi, right? I went through AutoFi with my Ford dealer, one of my clients, who, when I was like, I want that truck. And they're like, cool, here's the app. And I filled it out. And 90 seconds later, I'm approved. And 4 days later, there's a truck sitting in my driveway from one of my clients that's out of province kind of a thing. That was, I think we're headed in that direction. And so there are companies that are going to push the envelope. There are those that are just going to jellyfish, leech, poison everything. And so that's my fear with that. Now, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, right, kind of on this whole people thing and the value of CPO, we've kind of talked to the incentive side of CPO and that people know the value of purchasing certified pre-owned. Do you think that some of it as well, though, is a shift in consumer expectation where, there's a decline in production of new vehicles, and we understand that people need to buy new vehicles. But do you think it's also like, hey, a year ago, I wanted all the bells and whistles, and now that all of this has happened, do you think consumers are kind of backing up a little bit and saying, well, I'd be happy with 80% of those things and maybe a 3-year-old vehicle that still has all of the stuff I want?
Yeah. It definitely could be. I think that, one of the drivers in it is certainly, the financial incentive, right? Because, if you're going to go with CPO, you're probably going to have some sort of captive incentive, whether it's 0% or whatever that might be. You've got the service contract warranty on top of that. But I also think, and I think this is through the generations, but I think that in our generation in particular, we have seen the cost of a new car or a new truck. You want the brand new GMC Denali, and you're going to pay more for that than our parents paid for their second house, not their first house. I mean, it could be an $80,000 truck, right? I mean, it's really amazing. And if you say, okay, well, good, I need the 116 month, whatever finance on that. I mean, you're still going to put $1,000 a month into that. Which is incredible, really, to think about it from that standpoint. So I do think that from a value, let's say just from a value standpoint, when you're a lot of consumers, when they're gauging that value, we've all been taught this, right? As soon as it rolls off the curb, it loses half its value, whatever. Right. But the fact that, these vehicles are lasting longer, they're built better. They do still come with a number of the quote unquote bells and whistles that you're talking about. And it's not $80,000. And I think that, even, and this is my experience, and I don't know a ton of people who just have all the money in the world to burn, but right. A couple of them. And even more so than the average person, they are very aware of value and how much something costs. And I think, in part, they've been very successful because of that, right? Mm-hmm. And they look at a new car and go, my goodness, that's, I love that new, Navigator, but my goodness, man, that is an expensive vehicle, right? It's beautiful. It totally decked out, gorgeous, absolutely. But a 3-year-old Navigator or a 3-year-old Tahoe or whatever you're buying, still a great buy. Still a great buy. So I do think there's some value proposition there. And I think that the cost of vehicles has something to do with it. It's really astronomical. Yeah. And I mean, the tech that's involved is really driving a lot of that too, right? I mean, it's just who would have ever thought, but still a high price point.
Yeah. Well, and vehicles now are just computers.
Right.
When I look at my wife drives a Hyundai Palisade, and it drives itself and it does all the, and you go, dude, this ain't a vehicle anymore. This is Star Trek. This is one step closer to Star Trek.
In my mind, I don't know where your mind goes, but my mind immediately goes to somebody could hack this, right? I mean, it's immediately like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be driving down the highway.
Yeah. Well, to that point, it's funny you bring that up because in the Palisade, you can put on the whatever they call it, adaptive cruise control. You can take your hands off the steering wheel and that thing will steer on its own for 2.5 minutes. And then it'll go, boop, 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 put your hands back on the steering wheel. I've tested this because I'm a nerd. You can actually leave your hands off that steering wheel, even though it's beeping at you, because ultimately the vehicle doesn't want you to die.
Right.
Or at least that's the way they've programmed it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Now, there does come a time where I have to put my hands on the vehicle. To the point of hacking, though, there's already a company out there that has created a device that bypasses the internal flash of the vehicle, essentially, that just lets you go. And so that is a quote unquote legal way to that somebody has already discovered how to hack the system. So you're right. It is interesting what's going to happen when all vehicles are just computers with four wheels. I mean, Teslas are unreal. You get this software update, and now the vehicle turns into Bumblebee from the Transformers. It's
amazing.
It's amazing. And while the technology is really cool, especially for kind of a tech nerd like myself, that is also an interesting thing. And also to the point of pre-owned, I mean, all of this stuff is coming out. Admittedly, when I bought my 19 F-150, I was super stoked. And then they show, images of the 2020. And I'm like,
I want that one.
Dude, this one has a desk in it. This one's got a bigger screen. However,
I hear you, man.
I guess my whole point and kind of consumer expectation is, and with the pandemic, dialing it back and focusing on what matters most, kind of to what you were speaking on, of $100,000 or $40,000. We have to realize a 5-year-old vehicle, to whoever buys it, is pristine and gorgeous. Like, it is still a beautiful, beautiful vehicle. I had an experience with this where when I bought my Palisade, I was going to trade in our 2010 Nissan Pathfinder. Like when they were still rugged, not now when they kind of look like a little bit of a marshmallow, but like when they still kind of had that rugged off. And it had some dings. There was a scratch on one side. There was all these, there was a couple of the little rust spots, and there's a big crack in the windshield. I mean, I live in Alberta. It's the prairie. Winter here, lots of trucks on the road. And I thought, nobody's going to buy this thing. I'm going to have to fix the windshield. I'm going to have to get that, the rust repair, all these sorts of things. The dealership didn't want it. They're like, we're going to have to put more work into it than it's worth. Try and sell it privately. I was hesitant. And this is during COVID, right?
Oh, wow.
This was just 2.5 weeks ago. I listed it on Facebook Marketplace. I'm not exaggerating. Over 300 messages from people.
Oh, my gosh.
I've got cash. I will buy it right now. I was like,
that's awesome.
People getting mad at me because I couldn't respond to them fast enough. Yeah, I wrote a cool story about it. Like, the VDP description was amazing on this thing. But still.
Award winner. Award winner there, right?
Best-selling VDP. But it made me think. The things that I cared about or thought I cared about, dude, that was somebody else's treasure. And I had people lining up. I'll be there right now, cash in hand.
Yeah.
Don't sell it. I got it. It's mine. And it was unreal. And so it made me think, wow, like, has it always been this way? Or is it just the fact that people have maybe dialed back their expectations a little bit amidst all of this? They still know they need something. They need the utility of the vehicle, and they're willing to overlook some of the maybe cosmetic feature damages or whatever there might be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we'd have to admit, just again, going back to our world, let's just say we're talking North America, US, Canada, we are spoiled, man. We're so spoiled. I mean, just with everything. I mean, from A to Z, right? Or A to Z, right? I'm on a Canadian podcast, right? But, I think that if you think that way and you start to say, man, do I need this third or fourth vehicle? All these other things, whatever that is, whatever that list is in your head, it really does. I think that it's a great point. I mean, this time frame has really forced a lot of people to reevaluate. What truly is important? What do I need versus what I want? What can I, truly, in a vehicle or whatever it might be, a used vehicle? This is an awesome car. This is a great car. I don't need necessarily to get into this kind of thing. So I think you're right. I think there's a little bit of that. They see value. They're also reevaluating. And to your point earlier, man, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who their income has been impacted negatively, right? Or maybe they've lost a job, or, maybe through no fault of their own, their company, unfortunately went out of business. I mean, there's the list goes on and on. So you and I were talking just before this, man, I'm just thankful, for where we are. It could be a lot worse. And so I think all of those things kind of add into it for sure.
Amazing. I have a couple more questions for you along the lines of what dealers should be focusing on, in your opinion. I mean, somebody that sits in your seat, like I said, has a ton of views. Like, I mean, you're getting information on retail, on wholesale, on finance, on vendors, on like I would be scared to jump into your mind just to see the amount of like data and information that flies at you. So I'm going to ask you that, but that question is going to be reserved for my exclusive DPB Pro community. If you want access to the question and the answer from a man, Bill Zadeits, you need to apply for membership in that group. It's free, but it's a community that is growing with like-minded individuals who are positive, who are making big things happen, who want to collaborate, and who want to get the best information. So I'm going to ask Bill that question in just a minute. After the fact, if you want access, you need to apply for access over at thedealerplaybook.com/DPB Pro. Bill, man, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of the podcast. Where can those listening get in touch with you? And by the way, tell us about all the stuff you've got going on.
Oh, yeah, man. No, I appreciate it. Man, thank you for the invite. Ever since we sat down a couple of years ago, at least face to face at NADA, and just had a really, a good conversation, I've been looking forward to being on the podcast, man. So congrats to you on the success. I know it's a rocket ship, so happy for you on everything there. Our company, really operates in the media side of the automotive industry, and really on the B2B side, right? So we focus exclusively on the used car markets with a number of different titles, but certainly Auto Remarketing Canada up in your neck of the woods is our primary media source there. And we had we had a great live event planned for June, and unfortunately, just because of the circumstances, unable to do that. But we do have, again, I'm going to use this word, so forgive me. We made a pivot, and we're doing a digital event for Auto Remarketing Canada, and it's coming up in September, where we've got 2 great weeks of content for dealers and for executives that are in the used car space. And so we've got our dealer training week, September 14th through the 18th. And then we'll come back the next week, September 21st to the 25th, with our remarketing, our wholesale, our auto finance and analysis content. And people can learn more about that at autoremarketingcanada.com, or shoot me an email. Shoot me a text. I think my LinkedIn profile is included here too. Would love to hear from you. But we're excited about that. It's cool to be able to do it that way. I mean, but it's not as cool as us having Michael come and wow the audience for a full 45 or 50 minutes with his wisdom. But you know what? We're going to make the best of it in terms of what we've got. We got some great speakers, some great trainers, and really excited about having that later in September. So I appreciate the opportunity to mention it, man.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to it. I love to be able to check it out. September 14th to the 18th for training week.
Right.
You said? Yeah. Awesome. We're going to link that all up in the show notes. Definitely go check that out. Bill, thanks so much for joining me on the Dealer Playbook podcast.
Mike, great seeing you, man.